It's been a while since I've been on an athletics track, but I'm here down in Newcastle to speak to Eliza Ault-Connell. I was able to share 2 Australian teams with Eliza, one in 2004 at the Athens Paralympic Games, and then 14 years later when she would make a return into the Gold Coast 2018 team to win a silver medal in the marathon.
The biggest race of your career, so you've done a great job.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I enjoyed just being out here. It was fantastic.
Eliza Ault-Connell, welcome to 1+1.
Thanks, Fearnley.
We're here at the Blue Track in the inner city track of Newcastle. What sort of memories does this place bring you back?
Well, this place is looking a little more flash than when I was here last. It's now the Fearnley doors track.
But back when you were training on here, it was the Newcastle Athletics track, and I think it was so worn you would almost eat blue.
You would come out. Do you remember when it would rain? And do you remember the blue that you would come home with?
Yep.
Do you remember that?
I remember those sessions because when it did start raining, I would be crying in a corner, and for some reason, when the rain would come, when the wind would come, whenever it would be the most fierce opposition in the session, you would thrive.
I was that jerk, right?
Well, what is it that makes you thrive when it feels like you're in one of those really uncomfortable moments?
Being uncomfortable, it's something that, we're taught to avoid, isn't it? But, having that experience and that opportunity and what you learn about yourself in those moments, and just realising, I guess, everyone around you is thinking, you're absolutely mad. And you go, do you know what? I am absolutely mad and I'm really, really loving it. It just gives you that sense of satisfaction and when you're loving what you do, you want to do it in rain, hail or shine.
Did you always, as a kid, have a love for sport?
I always had a love for sport. I loved, being involved. I loved the friendships. I loved the connections, but I wasn't competitive. I didn't have that desire to be the best or to win or to, I wasn't driven by the success of sport. I was driven to do sport because I loved being involved. And my God, how that's changed.
So it has changed. You are competitive now.
Oh, 100%. And the thing that really shifted, I think, when I went through the experience that I had with meningococcal disease was that, I went from, enjoying participation, enjoying the connection of sport, to then realising that, there was something more. And that something more was that competitive edge. And that was one of the things that I discovered that, I was 16 years old. We were only beginning to discover ourselves as teenagers.
Well, tell me about that day, the day before you realised that you had got meningococcal.
So it was a Monday of the first week of the school holidays in September, the spring break, beautiful time. I was with a girlfriend, we went swimming for the day. The really, really funny thing was, thinking back to that particular day, a gentleman came in and, look, he was probably in his maybe late 50s, early 60s, and he had a prosthetic leg. And at the time, 15, 16-year-old girls kind of get the giggles up because you think, he's got a prosthetic leg. Wow, I've never actually seen one in real life. The very next day, woke up, headaches, nausea, as you do. You think you've got, food poisoning or, perhaps a little, stomach bug. That night, on life support, the story plays out, having my legs amputated a couple of days later, in that position of needing to wear prosthetics for the rest of my life. And not, thinking back and thinking that, I'd seen someone that, why in that moment, I probably passed hundreds of people in my life that, have had prosthetic limbs. And why on that particular given day, the day beforehand, was he in my life and, you know, swimming in the pool with me. One of those things I'll, you know, obviously, you know, I was in the right place at the right time, because I guess I looked at, you know, I thought about it and I looked at him, and he was going, he was swimming, he was carrying on with his life as normal. And all of a sudden my life was about to take, I guess, that turn.
When you were at home and you did get a headache, a few symptoms, what did your family think?
She's got a headache, she's nauseous, you know what, she's probably eaten something bad. I thought, you know, well, it could be the flu coming on. You never think it's something serious. You hear stories about people, you know, having accidents or having major illnesses, and you never think that you're going to be in that position. I can still recall a moment, I'd just been sick, and I remember holding myself on the vanity in the bathroom and looking into the mirror. And I can still remember looking into my eyes and just saying, I've never been this sick in my life. What the is going on?
Do you know when the alarm bells really hit your parents, your mum?
So as you tend to do when you're not feeling well, you think, I'll pop a couple of paracetamol and I'll take a nap. And that's what I did. And, you know, I probably fell asleep for, you know, a couple of hours, and I was very fortunate that the phone rang, and the phone call was actually for me. And Mum came in with the cordless phone. She just, you know, it was big in the 90s, you know, when you had a cordless phone. How good was it? You remember that, right?
Car call. We didn't have cordless phones.
You didn't even have phones.
We had to go to the post office and share a phone.
But we had a cordless phone. And, you know, I think back, if she didn't, you know, if she didn't push Dad to get that cordless phone, and she still had the, you know, the old springy corded, you know, telephones that we had in the 90s, if she didn't have that cordless phone and bring that phone into me to take that phone call, could the outcome here have been completely different? If she didn't come in and discover that I had a fever because I'd kicked all the blankets off, and that my feet were actually turning blue and black, would the outcome have been different?
And the following days, everything changed pretty quickly after that. You mentioned you were in a coma.
Yeah.
Your family had to make some pretty quick choices at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I think back, I had the easy job. I was placed in an induced coma. You know, I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't in control of the treatments, the procedures. Put yourself in the situation, you're a parent now. I'm a parent. Imagine having to sign the consent forms to have your child's legs removed. I mean, I put myself in that position, and I imagine the strength that they would have had to have mustered to be able to do that. I mean, not that they had a choice, really. They knew that it was do it or die. You know, I had to continue on, and I had to live my life with hope, because they had placed so much strength into me and my recovery that, you know, I can't help but think how strong they were.
You say that you did have the easy job, but that you were in an induced coma, but
well, relatively easy job.
while your parents had to sign the consent form.
Yeah.
But then you were 16 and you were given the choice around when the infection was in your hands. How does a 16-year-old grapple with the idea of amputating or not amputating parts of your hand? Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty wild thought that, you know, you can, at that age, be in control, and, you know, it was a choice. And it's funny, a girl came to visit me. Her name was Nicole, and she, just 1 year prior, had meningococcal disease. She made the choice not to have her hands touched by surgery, so she kept her hands intact. The disease took such a toll on her body. She lost all feeling in her hands. She lost feeling in her arms, and basically the disease just ravaged her body. It allowed disastrous things to happen. And I saw the life that I guess she was leading, and not being able to utilise her hands. I thought, you know, I want to be as functional as possible. And I still remember the night coming back from surgery. I just had all the skin removed. I also had, you know, abrasion from, you know, the disease. It basically causes bleeding to your extremities. So I had skin removed off my arms and legs. And I had my fingers amputated on the same day, and I remember coming back to the ward that night, you know, covered in bandages and, you know, hands wrapped up like balls, and just thinking, I've made the right choice, because this is going to allow me to lead the most full and productive life that I'll be able to. I didn't know what shape or form that was going to quite look like at that. I mean, 16 years old, no 16-year-old knows what their life is going to be like, let's be honest. But I guess when you go through something like that, where you've got that opportunity to recreate, you know, a lot of people say, oh God, it must have been so difficult being 16 years old and going through something like that. But I say, you know, that I actually think it was a great time to have to go through something like that. You know, I wasn't a small child in school that was going through bullying and all of those kinds of things that can occur, or did occur, lesser so now, we know. And I wasn't an adult in a job, you know, working something that, you know, all of a sudden was going to have to change because of the situation that I'd gone through. It allowed me to recreate, without sounding corny, sounds like I'm, you know, but it allowed me to recreate my future and create the path that I wanted to see my life take, essentially.
When were you introduced to Paralympic sport after that?
So essentially my sporting career began in rehab, and it was, I had a wonderful physiotherapist. I went home from hospital, didn't go to like the rehabilitation centre, went home. I wanted to get home, was keen as just to be at home with my dog and, you know, get back to normal life as soon as possible. Found a young, naive physiotherapist who was a fresh graduate, who agreed to, you know, teach me to walk and do my everyday life again. And I don't know, maybe he saw something. I don't know why, still to this day, but he bought in, remember the old VHS tapes? Yeah. Bought in an old VHS tape of the 1996 Paralympics. And he showed me a video, and this American woman popped up on my screen. And she was blonde, absolutely stunning, and she was running. And she was running on 2 prosthetic limbs. And I saw what she was doing, and gosh, I couldn't help but go, I want in, you know, I want in on that. You know, at the time, I weighed like, you know, 30 kilos. The disease had completely ravaged my body. I was, you know, in a bad way. You know, I had a lot of work to do. I couldn't walk at that stage. I couldn't do anything. I could barely do anything for myself. But you know, I saw what she was doing and what she was actually able to, I guess I could see what, you know, the running was enabling her to do in her life. And I was inspired. You know, that word inspired, which, you know, we love that word, right?
Well, I think we love that word when it's our own.
When we can share it, yeah.
But when we're I guess, hijacked.
The one inspiring.
And it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
When did you first try your first pair of either running legs or wheelchair, racing chair?
Yeah. So the first experience with the running legs, so we learned to walk, tick that box. And the first experience with running legs was in 1998, the old Homebush track in Sydney. And, you know, just getting these amazing carbon fibre legs was, you know, an incredible experience, you know, I loved running prior to my illness, and it was something I never thought I would, you know, be able to do again. And I still recall, you know, the first time I put them on and just how light they were compared to an everyday walking leg. I couldn't believe the difference. And, you know, they're quite hard to, you know, to control. And, you know, slowly over time I built up and, you know, started to be able to, you know, to run and to jump and, you know, started doing long jump and things that I never dreamt were going to be possible. But because of these amazing pieces of technology, you know, was enabling me to do that.
When did you find your way to wheelchair racing?
Look, you know, I wanted to run. I wanted to run at the Sydney Paralympics. You know, we were a couple of years out from the Games. I thought, you know, wouldn't it be bloody awesome to be able to race in Sydney? Wasn't to be. Suffered injuries, had to have surgery. Sport, you make amazing friends, you meet amazing people. I went to Sydney Paralympics and, I saw you guys racing. I saw you, I saw Louise, I saw Christy and Holly, and I saw you guys racing. And I thought, well, I can't run. What am I going to do? I want to represent Australia. What am I going to do? And went to a Wheelchair Sports New South Wales come and try day. And yeah, the rest is history. Got in the chair, fell in love.
What did you think?
It was love at first sight.
And then paid for it for the
next 20 years.
What did you think when you were first surrounded by just so many variations of disability, the community that is Paralympics?
And I think you'd probably agree that first time walking into a food hall, I think that is like that first major experience of, it's one thing seeing, I guess, people with a disability doing their sport and excelling in something that they're passionate about. But walking into a food hall and, watching people with no arms, feeding themselves with a knife and fork with their feet, watching, 3 or 4 people with a vision impairment, all, hands on shoulders walking in together, you realise that there's passion and there's community and there's just a sense of passion for life. And yeah, I don't know if you recall the same kind. I mean, you've probably got some stories about food halls as well. Walking in and that.
I do think that sometimes
confrontation.
The peripheral experience of the games is sometimes the most meaningful. That's for sure.
Yeah, more than sport.
Do you remember when you were given the news that you were going to become a Paralympian, that you did qualify for Athens?
Just that feeling of, I'm going to actually get to wear the green and gold. It's a kid's dream, isn't it? And to be able to have that opportunity and realise that you are one of the select few that is able to do something that you love and do it at the highest level that you could possibly dream of. Incredible, absolutely incredible.
In front, then Savage on the outside of Stankovic, the Australian, Tony Gray-Thompson. There's Eliza Stankovic, 22 years of age, second in the demonstration event, competing in her first Paralympic Games.
And the only way from here is up, you know that?
Hopefully, most definitely.
What's the reason that we didn't see you at another Paralympics?
Beijing was completely, that was the go, that was the goal. Got married in 2007. The funny thing was, I obviously had meningococcal disease and I was told that I was perhaps never going to be able to have children. And, Kieran and I had discussed that, we would adopt and that wasn't going to be an issue. That was going to be the path we were going to take. Yeah, there were obviously other plans in place. And, yeah, by the end of 2007, we were expecting our first child. And by 2008, Beijing Paralympics, I was holding a baby and you guys were racing.
Are there any complications or perceptions that are altered when you're a person with a disability, a mum with a disability?
I think immediately people kind of jump to the conclusion that, what you are doing is more special than, a general member of our community. That, for some reason, what you're experiencing is harder. And, I don't necessarily agree with it. People say, the extra things that you have to go through. And I think for anyone that has a child, they have to go through that steep learning curve, able-bodied or not. Having a child, introducing a child into the world is, probably the greatest change that you can have in your life. From the time Evie was born, I just knew that it was it was one of the things I was meant to do.
And during that time, during the 14 years away from sport, you would work in advocacy around meningococcal.
Yeah.
You would work in advocacy around the use of vaccines. What did you learn during that time?
Look, ever since I contracted meningococcal disease, this is the funny thing, and this is something that I know we've previously discussed. I've spent a lot of time talking about the prevention of meningococcal disease. What I went through as a 16-year-old, what I see people having to go through, what I see families having to go through. You know, I don't want people to have to suffer. It's a vaccine preventable disease. But at the same time, I sometimes feel quite hypocritical because here I am being able to live the most amazing, full, rich life with experiences and amazing people around me. But yet here I am saying, but don't catch meningococcal disease. You know, so I feel sometimes like it's perhaps a little bit contradictory, but, you know, we also, you know, I've had the opportunity over the years to, you know, meet people that have lost loved ones from the disease. And I think that's where you realise that, you know, this disease is not pleasant. You know, it obviously for me, I've been able to overcome, again, another word, you know, inspiration, overcoming, all of those sorts of words. You know, what is success defined as? All of those kinds of things. We bandy around cliches. But, you know, I see people that have lost loved ones, and I would hate to think that now, today, being a mother, if I had to watch my child go through what my parents had to watch me go through during that initial time of uncertainty, and knowing that there was a vaccination that was able to prevent that.
Do you ever think of an alternate life without meningococcal entering your world?
You know, and my kids are classics with this line, and I don't know whether they're just trying to get the "how much do you love me" kind of thing, but they're like, "Mummy, do you feel sad that you had meningococcal disease?" And, you know, I think for, you know, young kids to come out and say something like that, you know, they've obviously processed a lot and thought about it because, you know, maybe their perception is that, you know, you should feel sad. And, you know, my answer is always, but baby, how can I be sad when I've been able to do the amazing things that I have and I've got you? Would I have had you if I hadn't had meningococcal disease? And, you know, the experiences that you know, my children get to have and your children get to have because of our disabilities, you know, they get to see amazing things.
Have you had that conversation with your kids? Because so I've had to have it with my kids, especially my eldest, because you go into daycare and kids ask, "What's wrong with your dad?" Or I actually heard Harry ask another kid, "Isn't your dad in a wheelchair as well?" Or
awesome.
when he sees me and, you know, another mate in a wheelchair throwing the footy in the backyard, and he drags a dinner chair out because he believes that you can't play catch unless you're in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Have you sat your kids down and spoke about disability and you know what the implications are, or what the life is all about?
I think our kids are pretty bloody lucky. You know, they've got that opportunity to be exposed on, you know, a day-to-day basis, and they see what living a life with a disability is all about, and they see that it's no different to any other life being led. I love the fact that we have the opportunity to share our disability with not only our children, but our children's friends and their community. And I love the fact that, you know, kids in the playground will run over and say, "Oh, how cool are your robot legs?" So boys call them the robot legs and girls call them the Barbie legs. And that's, you know, that was a you know, a really simple way that I found when they were particularly younger to kind of introduce the fact of, well, yeah, they look kind of different, but what these things, a chair, what a prosthetic enables us to do is to lead a happy, normal life, you know. We live extraordinary lives. We're lucky, you know.
What do you think that your kids are going to take away from you? What do you want them to learn about you, to know about you?
Look, what my kids, I guess, take away every day is that you have to live your life with passion. No matter what you do, no matter what you choose to do in life, that you've got that ability to make that choice. And I want them to feel empowered to say, you know, if they want to, you know, if they want to pursue a career as a chef, or if they want to pursue a career as an artist, that they find their passion and that they can pursue it. And that was kind of the hope, I guess, you know, when in 2016, when we were watching the Rio Games, when, you know, my daughter turned to me and said, "Mum, you used to be so cool when you did wheelchair racing." And, you know, bull to a red flag. It was kind of like, well, damn it, I'm going to show you, aren't I? You know, I thought, you know, I've got the opportunity to show my children, you know, something that I'm passionate about.
Is it different to be back in the sport the second time round?
Oh, God, oh, oath. It is like the girls are fitter, they're faster, they are, you know, the sport is just more professional than it was, you know, going back in the days where people were struggling to financially, you know, make ends meet to be able to do something that they loved. You know, today we see athletes that, you know, are, you know, doing absolutely mind-blowing and incredible times that we never would have thought would have been possible, you know, back in the early 2000s. The technology shift, and to be, you know, to be on this journey, you know, I call it BC, before children, and AD, after children. You know, to have the two careers in sport, you know, I feel pretty bloody blessed to be able to do that and to have, you know, reinvented myself, you know, again as an athlete 2.0. And there's no reason that, you know, people sort of said, well, Tokyo, well, you kind of feel weird mentioning Tokyo now, but, you know, people kind of said to me, oh, you know, at the end of 2020, you know, you're going to finish up. You know, you've achieved that going to the Games. And no, because clearly we've got to wait till 2021 now.
Well, with the delay of the Games, is the drive still there? Is it still...
100%. And, you know, I talk about this quite often, that people say, you know, how are you motivated to train in such uncertain times? But what motivates me is my passion for what I do. And so I love each and every session. So I know a lot of athletes are, you know, going through a lot of different things, you know, particularly at this time, and you know, their motivation is waning in different areas. And for me, training every day is something that I love doing. So no matter what, regardless if we get a Games next year or not, I'm going to be training like I'm going to be competing, and I'm not retiring anyway after the end of Tokyo 2021. So.
Well, I have no doubt that there is a long future back in the sport. You are the most resilient person that I've ever met. So just, you know, really thank you for joining me on 1+1.
Always a pleasure, Kurt.